Alright then, lads, ladies, and those of us who know better, my name is Jackson MTT Kenny, and welcome back to Bold and Bright. I've been mentioning for the last couple episodes that I keep meaning to talk about a project I'm doing, and I'm finally getting round to that now because I need a bit of an easier episode to edit. The last one was a nightmare, and I'm planning a big one for after this. Google Images is not my friend once it has to actually go into some editing software. But not to keep you in suspense, the next big project that I'm working on, well, when I first started talking about it, it was a future project. Now I am actually in the middle of it. It's an animatic for Gravity Falls. I've been into Gravity Falls since it came out, and then I dropped out of it because it was just harder and harder to source the episodes. Because back in my day, we didn't have all these streaming services. Did we even have Disney Channel? I cannot remember what channel Gravity Falls came out of, but I don't think we had it. But I fell off the boat and just completely forgot how good it was. Okay, technically, it's a kid's show, but it doesn't really feel like a kid's show. All the characters are really fleshed out, and can I just go off about the art style here for a minute? It's gorgeous. I think there was a controversy like over a decade ago because people were claiming that the Cal art style was too similar to each other. Frick that. It's really, really expressive. The animation's fluid. There's a load of fun Easter eggs, and the backgrounds are gorgeous. I've been studying the backgrounds of Gravity Falls to try to get better at my own backgrounds. Flip me, but the atmosphere they managed to get is great. Never thought I'd be a Pacific Northwest aesthetic kind of person, but here we are. Redwoods are cool. As for the audio that I'm using for this animatic, it's Meet Me in the Woods by, I want to say Lord Huron? I'm gonna say Huron. That just makes me sound like I'm saying Heron with the accent on too strong. Because it has exactly the kind of like spooky, kind of nostalgic vibe I want. The theme of Gravity Falls is growing up, and it does it so well that even though I am years older than Dipper and Mabel by the time they finally leave Gravity Falls, the theme of summer has to end and you have to grow up, and that's just something, like, you have to accept that. It's so weird to see a show that handles that maturely, especially one that's technically advertised as a comedy. I feel like a lot of comedy relies a little too much on like man-child humor, which I'm not a fan of, so actually covering kids' problems and how brains get a little bit weird when you get older, yeah, good job, it works. And I'm not much of a crier, but I get misty every time we get to the last scene because I know what it's like to have to leave summer behind. I'm not even typically one for nostalgia. I would say that right now in this period of time, I am happier than I have been, I think, in my entire life because I'm living as myself genuinely. I have a community, but I still know the feeling of you had a good day and you don't really want the good day to end now. And to give you a wee idea of the plot of the animatic I'm doing, the last animatic I did, the one for Good Omens, was basically just summing up a lot of the big moments in their relationship that had happened and then setting that to a song I really liked. This one is me going a little bit more outside the box because I wanted to do kind of my take on older Dipper and Mabel after, because they leave Gravity Falls like literally right after they turn 13, and this is them coming back when they're in like their 20s. I'm hoping to have it out by August. I'm trying to give myself a little bit of a longer deadline because I have this split up into 4 sections. The first section is about as many frames as the Good Omens animatic was in total, so yeah, I did the Good Omens one in 2 months, and that felt like a bit of a squeeze, so I am giving myself the time for this one. Hopefully. I believe in learning on the job, so I'm hoping that I'll get more efficient at this the more it goes on. Maybe. There's been a lot of takes on Older Dipper and Mabel because it's just such a fun concept. What happens when these kids who had some of their formative years in this crazy, crazy environment return to that crazy environment? And it's a little bit bittersweet because, yeah, they're going back and they still love the place. It's still theirs, but they're not the same people who were there 10 years ago. And just to clear it up, I am not doing this in a whole, oh, they were so traumatized they didn't go back to the place for 10 years. Yeah, no, they've been coming back every summer and every winter, in my perception at least, but the plot for this animatic is that Dipper is working as a research assistant, which means that he can't go back to Gravity Falls for the same amount of time as Mabel. So she's already been in Gravity Falls for like the entire summer. If I had to guess, she's probably studying for an art thing or an illustration thing, and she wants to like record some of the landscapes, because she's always been an artist. So she's there for a couple months, dealing with some things, and then Dipper shows up right as things start to go downhill. And while I was in the planning stages for this, I had to think, okay, our 2 main characters are Dipper and Mabel. Am I going to focus more on Dipper, more on Mabel, or split evenly between the two, and I think just based off my storyboards, this is going to be more Mabel-centric, which may have been influenced by the fact that I don't like drawing men as much as women. Sorry, Dipper. But also, I feel like when I say that they're the two main characters, I still feel like Dipper gets a lot more sympathy and empathy than Mabel does, even though they're the exact same age and we're working in really crappy circumstances. I mean, I think anyone who's even dipped their toes into Gravity Falls knows that Mabel is one of the most controversial characters because she technically started the Weird Mageddon apocalypse. Technically. I'm not blaming her for that. She did not do that knowingly. And also, she was a teeny tiny gear in all the cogs that were moving to make that happen. Like, really, if we're going to blame two people for really getting Weird Mageddon going, it should be Bill and Ford. Like, look, I love Ford as well. Bill's a ton of fun, but I don't want to actively spoil, like, the big emotional moment that I'm putting right at the end of this, but, I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with the, Mabel's Fault location that showed up in the Lost Legends graphic novel. I didn't even know there were graphic novels for this, then I watched the big comic dub on YouTube, which you should really go watch. It's great. The voice acting is 10 out of 10. And the idea that right after Weird Mageddon, they found a big fault line and Dipper called it Mabel's fault. Dude, be nicer to your sister, Jesus Christ. And so I kind of wanted to explore the theme of what happens when a 12-year-old girl accidentally starts the apocalypse, and quite frankly, the people around her who should know better blame her for that as well. Like, come on. This might be me projecting slightly, because when I was around that age, I was blaming myself for a whole load of shite that I didn't have a say in. When people talk about another thing in Lost Legends was that Mabel got a little bit of a redemption arc, that felt a little bit shoehorned in because I don't think Mabel needed a redemption arc. She's literally just a kid, and she's currently vying with Dipper for my favorite character. Yes, I know, that's the basic bitch option of picking one of the two main characters as your favorite, but look, they're both so incredibly autistic, and I keep forgetting that at no point in the show was it ever mentioned that they're canonically queer, because Mabel screams like some variety of bi, pan, poly. I mean, Dipper as well. Lest we forget, their first kiss was the same guy. And, like, obviously Dipper's trans. Again, that was not a thing that was ever explicitly confirmed, but I don't have time to go into all the reasons I have, besides just the fact that he has incredibly trans man vibes, but oh my god, there's a seagull on the roof. Shush, I'm trying to talk about Gravity Falls. We never learn what his real name is. He goes by a nickname, but he has a list of boys' names that he would rather have, and he's really self-conscious about his voice being squeaky, and also about being manly enough, which could just be regular prepubescent boy nonsense, but frankly, it screams trans to me. Also, someone on the Gravity Falls team went and said that Dipper's real name is Mason. Look, I don't want to stereotype, but Mason is one of the transest names that I have ever heard. So good on you, Dipper, for transitioning, and whilst the queer thing is not going to be a huge part of the animatic, there is going to, like, it's going to be sprinkled in there, okay? Like Flip, I'm going to leave my little queer autistics without so much as a pride pin. After the last animatic I did, I swore that I was going to try to make the next one really simple, but frick it, when you've got enough love for a piece of media, the dopamine comes out absolutely nowhere to get it done. Really, brain, you can't come up with the happy chemicals to let me hoover the floor, but you can absolutely find the happy chemical for me to storyboard and then make an animatic. Whew. If you're not keeping up with my We Art blog thing on Tumblr, this would be a great time to do so, because I will be posting updates for this project mostly on that. I'll probably also be posting updates here on YouTube, and then a big behind the scenes video like I did for the Good Omens one, right after the animatic gets published. But in great timing to keep my motivation for Gravity Falls up, want to say HK of That Gravity Falls fan, who's been here since like 2017, got to do an interview with Alex Hirsch? I want to say Hirsch, yeah. The dude who made Gravity Falls, and I've only seen a little bit so far, but I'll be getting out the crochet basket and listening to it some more, because Alex Hirsch, when he talks about the stuff that he's made, you really feel like the care that went into it. And not to get on my soapbox about capitalism and media and endless live action remakes and reboots, but I feel like it's getting harder to find things that have a lot of love put into them that aren't directly indie projects. Like stuff like Lackadaisy, Nimona, those aren't exactly mainstream, but the care that goes into them. We're also living in the era of AI, which, for the love of God, don't get in on that. It's literally just stolen work remixed in a weird way. But the fact that, like, a random wee fella who had an interest in shows could just pitch that two weird kids have to go stay with their great uncle and more weird shite happens. And then they just made that. That is the core of it. It is literally just two weird kids go somewhere weird. Like, it's a show that manages to be so simple and so complex at the same time, and the fan base for it, despite some of the weird, shall we say, stuff that's gone on behind that I will not be dipping into today. Video essays before me have covered it. Thank God. But, I mean, I've already gushed in the Inktober episodes I did about how much I loved the fact that there was a full-blown cipher hunt to try to find a statue, and of course it was just in Oregon. But just saying, go to Oregon and search the woods till you find a statue wouldn't have been boring. Let's send everyone on an international treasure hunt. The wackiness you can get away with when that many people care about something is great. I also want to just mention that a huge reason that I even got this idea in the first place was because of a video that Wilder Art did, where they imagined their own grown-up Dipper and Mabel AU. I'm not using their plot for this, it's a completely different deal, but there's a lot of similarities between my design for Mabel and their design for Mabel, because they got it spot on. I'm not using their Bill design, I'm not using their Dipper design. They did so well for Mabel that I had to copy the hair and some of the outfits. Thank you very much, Will. I got a huge Gravity Falls dopamine boost off that. So yeah, keep tuned because I want to do a video about, like, aging up characters from, like, wee kids to grown-ups, because I've had to do that for my own original characters and now for these two. Like, what do you keep, what do you change? But that has to be scheduled for, like, 2 videos down the line. These things take 2 weeks to make, and that is me going full pelt. So, outro time. I mentioned the Tumblr blog. It's at Blue Bold and Bright or Jackson MTT Kenny. This podcast uploads a new episode every other Friday. I think that's about it. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Jackson MTT Kenny, and this has been Bold and Bright.